Call to order, Town of Prescott Valley Study Session, May 1st, 2025. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Williams. Absent. Councilmember Keel.
Present.
Councilmember Freund. Councilmember Greer.
Here.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Present.
Vice Mayor Searcher.
Here.
Mayor Pulguna.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. First up, Ms. Morris, Quarterly Financial Report, Fiscal Year 25. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Tonight we have 4 items on the agenda for discussion. We have prepared a presentation which includes all 4. So if it pleases the council, we can go ahead and go through the whole presentation. And of course, if you have questions throughout, we're happy to answer those.
Absolutely. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. So here are the items that we will be discussing today. One of the things that we want to do during the session is really provide you with that detailed overview of what's in the budget and the capital improvement plan, the fee schedule, and the quarterly report. But we also want your input and to be sure that we get your priorities moving forward. We'll come back to council on May 22nd with a tentative budget. So the feedback that we get today will incorporate those with the proposed budget then. We want to start with the quarterly financial report. As you know, we do provide financial information in the monthly council report. We also provide finance information during the annual audit or the annual comprehensive report, as well as the budget report. But we'd like to come to you quarterly just to give you an idea of where we are, how we're tracking during the year, just to provide more information. And so we have attached a copy of the draft quarterly financial report to the staff report and also provided you with a copy. Some of the things that are in the report, I've kind of put on a slide just to kind of walk through them. If you have the report in front of you on page 1, we really start with an executive summary. And what you'll see is that as March 31st, our major funds, which are the general fund, water, wastewater, and then stormwater, all have been performing very strongly. So in all of the funds, the ongoing revenues have exceeded the ongoing expenses. And so just to kind of touch bases on the general fund, which is what you see on the screen now, we had through year to date through March 31, $47 million in recurring revenues. And you can compare that with ongoing or recurring expenditures of $40 million. So we had a surplus at March 31 of about $6 million. And so it's been performing very strong. The slide that you have in front of you just kind of shows you how that comes in monthly. Sometimes the timing of revenues and expenses don't really match up, so you might see some variation month by month, but as a whole, again, we have that $6.4 million variance. In the report, we also talk about the business type activities, which are water, wastewater, stormwater. You can see that they're also performing very strongly. The water utility had $9 million of revenue, $6 million of expenses, so they had a surplus of $3 million before one-time operating and capital. The wastewater fund also performed very strongly. They had $5.3 million in revenue, $3.4 million in expenses, so they had a surplus of 1.96. And then stormwater had $653,000 in revenue, $285,000 in expenses, so a surplus of 147. So again, the town is performing very well, and we are structurally balanced, not only in our budget, but in our operating expenses. Moving through, we also provided a couple charts on our revenues. So 93% of our actual revenues comes from local taxes and intergovernmental. And so what we want to show you here on the top chart to the left is that we were fairly close to our budget in those 2 items. And then the chart below that is the breakdown of all our revenues. So as a total, we had expected $47.2 million in revenues through March 31, and we received 47. So we had a unfavorable variance of about $200,000, but that's less than 0.5% for variance. So we're pretty much on target. To the right, you can see those are our recurring expenditures, and we just do it by service area. And what you can see is that the budget is more than the expenses, so we are underspending our budget. Right now, for the general fund, there's a positive variance of $6.4 million. So again, there's strong performance within the different funds across the town. One of the items that we also wanted to include was to give you a picture of what our cash and investments look like. I don't have a slide on here, but in the report, you'll see that our investments have been performing well. We're predominantly invested in the local government investment pool. We average about $500,000 in interest income per month. And so what we did here is we just wanted to show you cash on hand plus the investments where we stood by fund type. the largest being the general fund at 74 million, then construction sales tax at almost 21 million, and utilities at 41. One note on here is that this does not represent what's available to spend because some of this is committed or restricted. But it gives you an idea about the health of the town and our position for liquidity, which is very strong. So that was the quarterly financial report. I'm not sure if you have any questions at this point.
Council, leave any questions at this time?
Okay.
Oh, ma'am, good job.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to the comprehensive fee schedule. So the town does on an annual basis do a review of our comprehensive fee schedule. This is for a couple of reasons. First, it's to make sure that we always keep in mind the value that we're bringing to the residents. And then we review the cost that it takes to deliver services, and we compare that to our cost recovery strategy. And so what we have here are some of the regulatory drivers that we have. One thing to note is 2 years ago, we didn't have a consolidated comprehensive schedule. So we had some fees within the code, the town code, and then we had some on separate schedules. So we brought those all together. And in the town code, it now refers to the comprehensive fee schedule. There are some fees that are not included in kind of this process, but we do disclose it on the fee schedule just to make it easier for our residents and our business community to find all the fees. And one of those is the water, wastewater, and stormwater. So those, if you recall, the council in 2023 passed a resolution with a 5-year plan for increases. So we do show the increases on our comprehensive fee schedule, but those have already been approved by council. The other piece is the development impact fees. That's governed by a different Arizona revised statute. It has a different process. We're required to review those every 5 years. And what we do is we look at our land use assumptions, our infrastructure improvement plan, as well as our development impact fee study. And so those are included on the schedule, but not part of the process. So the piece that we are concentrating on are those other fees that we're proposing. So on your dais, you should have a copy of this really large report, which is the comprehensive fee schedule. We also attached a copy to our staff report. And then earlier this week, we posted a copy on our website. And so what that was meant to do was to start a 60-day notice period before we intend to bring back to council some proposed fees. This works a lot like the tentative budget, where once we post this notice, these are the maximum fees that we could bring back to you for approval in June. And so what you'll see there is we've kind of gone through and we've cleaned up some language. We've noted where things have changed because we've changed the code. And then we've added some fees and maybe requested some increases. So the 60-day period is really intended for the public to come to us and give us some feedback on that. So when we come back to you in June, we may have the same proposal, or we may say, we decided not to increase these fees, or we decided not to add these fees. So this is here for comment. One of the notes about that is that finance does coordinate that piece, but each of the directors are responsible for their different areas, and they are available if you have questions on any certain fees in here.
Mayor, could I just jump in real quick? So this is an area that we definitely want to spend some more time in the fall. We've been talking with the council about how the consolidated fee schedule works. In particular, development services really hasn't been touched in a number of years, and that's an area that we want to really spend some time making sure that growth is paying for growth and that our fees are appropriately set, but also making sure that we have an easy to understand consolidated fee schedule so that when people come in to pay for permits and whatnot, they know exactly what to expect. So we're going to be doing a whole bunch of work this fall, and we'll be bringing that back to council as well.
Thank you very much. And so this kind of recaps what Town Manager Davidson was talking about. So what do we do when we do that fee study? We really want to focus again on, the value to the community, how easy is it for them to navigate through the fee schedule. Well-designed fees can reduce the burden on the general fund because then you don't have to subsidize activities with general fund money. So in that kind of same sense, though, you want to look at your fees and determine whether or not, we're recovering the appropriate amount. For example, we might have a program for the youth, but we want the youth to be able to access that program, and that we want them to participate. So we may only intend to recover 10%, but then we'll recover maybe 110% on something similar on the adult side, just so that, again, we can provide the community access and encourage participation. When we do this process, we do balance the needs of our residents. So whether they're residential, commercial, the ability of those residents to pay, fixed income residents, we look at, senior, adult, youth, and then whether or not we can provide a discount to families, veterans, that type of thing. The inputs into that are shown on this slide. So we look at the laws and statutes, we look at our resident needs, and we actually go down and calculate for each fee, how much staff time does it take to perform that service for the community, and then what other labor or material costs will there be, and what should we include? And of course, we want to do that public engagement piece. So this is kind of the process that we go to get to the proposed fees that you see before you. That was the fee schedule portion. I'm not sure if you have any questions at this time.
Any questions, council? No, ma'am.
Okay. Moving along. So before we jump into the capital improvement plan and the budget, we wanted to kind of talk about the council and resident priorities, just because this is always on the forefront of what we do. So when we set the fees or when we look at a budget item or a capital item, we want to make sure that this is meeting the needs of the community. So here are the inputs that we look at in that process. We look at the strategic plans, master plans, and studies. Most of those processes have an outreach to the community, so that's a great way for us to get feedback. We also look at, again, the community input and council priorities, which we'll look at some surveys here in a moment. And then we also look at our operational and maintenance needs. So we try to balance all of this with the priorities of the council and the community. We did a council budget survey in December to ask a couple questions. So what are our operational priorities? We see water security, quality and conservation, open space and wildlife habitat, and the pedestrian-friendly items like trails, sidewalks, and crosswalks was a very big theme. The priorities over the next 5 years, where does that reside? That's water, sidewalks, and streets, and then citizen engagement. And then for the capital improvement priorities, we asked what's most important: water quality, stormwater, drainage, facilities and town-owned buildings, streets and transportation, and public safety. You'll see that these themes really resonate as we go through the different surveys. So we did a community survey as well last year, and we asked, what is it that's most important to our residents and what are we doing well? This helps us, again, prioritize how we allocate limited resources. We want to be sure to touch those points where our residents are looking at, what do we need to do better and what's most important to them. We also did a focused budget survey in December, January, and we asked 3 important questions. One was, what do you believe is the most important financial priority for the town over the next 5 years? That was expanding or improving infrastructure, again with roads, water, sewer, maintaining existing infrastructure and services, reducing operating costs and increasing efficiencies, and then so on. The second question that we asked was, what areas do you think the town should prioritize in that next year's budget, which would be fiscal year 26, which we're talking about today? Water security, quality and conservation, open space and wildlife habitat preservation, streets and roads, traffic enforcement, pedestrian-friendly items like trails, sidewalks, crosswalks, police services, attracting business and industry and making job creation happen, and then affordable housing. So again, you'll see a lot of common themes here. And then the last question that we asked was, what current infrastructure should we focus on maintaining? Streets and transportation, water quality, public safety, open space, sidewalks, and so on. So again, we can see here that we've created a number of budget themes that you'll see: roads, water, open space, parks, and general infrastructure. So this is really what's driving how we prioritize our budget dollars this year. The other thing that we wanted to do is just kind of show you the inventory of items that we do have to maintain. So when we receive a capital improvement project request, it may be for something new or it may be to maintain or repair something existing. So we just kind of wanted to give you an idea of the infrastructure that the town owns. So here's public works. We have parks and recreation infrastructure. We have water system infrastructure, and we also have wastewater infrastructure. So those are the inputs that we use when we develop both the budget and the capital improvement program. Here we'll focus on the capital improvement program. As you know, we have 2 components to that. We have the project development side, which is really a multi-year forecasting tool to detail out our capital needs, our timing, and our costs. The 5-year CIP plan extends from 2026 to 2030, but we also plan out, in some instances, up to a 10-year timeline. So we're trying to capture those needs so that we can not only plan what we need to repair or create or, to support the community, but how we are going to finance that. We have that financial plan, so when the town comes back to you, management will come back to you on May 22nd with a 5-year CIP plan. At that point, we will have a financing plan to also bring to you, and that way you can see kind of what are those priority projects as a result of today's discussions, what we have in our plan, and then how are we going to fund those, and where might we have gaps or things that we need to pursue. These are our raw requests. I'll say this is our second level of raw requests. So first we had a number of requests that came in, and then as those came in, our subject matter experts looked at them. So fleet would look at vehicle and equipment, IT would look at any hardware, software, we would have facilities look at building, that type of thing. Once that came through that process, then Director Reuter would look at those from capital improvement projects. She would look to see what are the risks, what are the constraints, what are the alternatives, and kind of go from there. So that gives us the list that you see before you. So you can see with the 5-year proposed plan in 2026, we have about $80 million in requests. And then they kind of go up and down from there depending on what the needs were. We also have improvement programs. You can see 26 and 27 are substantially lower than 28, 29, 30. Part of what's driving that is moving out projects. So we had proposals for projects, and we said, does that need to be done in the next 2 years? And then we would move them out. The maintenance programs, this is for roadways, so this is really our streets pavement preservation. So you can see over time, based on the last study that Director Reuter brought before you, we knew that we had to invest more over time. This will be an interesting one when we come back to you with the 5-year plan, because the Highway User Revenue Fund is what pays for these items, and you can see that it's growing over time. What happens is all jurisdictions usually subsidize that fund with the general fund monies, and so we have to balance the needs for streets and transportation with what we have in the general fund available. Potential funding sources to consider, not only just for those roadway projects. There's a number of ways to fund the CIP projects. One is pay-as-you-go, which is what we've done over time. So any year that our revenues exceed our expenditures, we end up with savings or a surplus. This is very much the same as you run your own household. So in months where you have more revenues than expenses, you have money left over. So a lot of times what we do is we put that in a savings account. We'll put it in there either for a rainy day, or maybe we know that we want a big purchase later, or maybe we just want it for emergency reasons. We do the same at the town, so we build our fund balance over time. We can do that and then use that strategically for different projects like the capital improvement projects. Another way that we can finance these is that we can use one-time revenues. If you think about it, if a business comes into town, they'll pull a permit if they're building a building. So that permit is a one-time building. When they're building, we charge construction sales tax. That's one-time income. So we set that aside as one-time monies, and we only use that to pay for one-time expenses. If you think about that, you don't want, if you have a windfall, you don't want to pay for your regular expenses, so they don't fund ongoing expenses. Other ways that we can finance capital projects are specific grants. Sometimes those have complex requirements. There are federal, state, tribal grants. When we look at those, we weigh the administrative burden or the requirements for receiving the funds with the benefit or what we're paying for. And sometimes we don't accept a grant, or sometimes we'll chase more of the same type. Development impact fees, those are we kind of touch bases on the fee schedule where we can assess those where growth pays for growth. And so those can only be used for specific purposes that were included in the land use assumption study, the infrastructure improvement study, and the development impact fee study. The other way that you can finance capital improvements is debt. So one thing about debt is jurisdictions use it to create intergenerational equity. So if you think about it, if we were to make a major investment today in a building, then the current taxpayers and the residents would have to pay for it today. But if we fund that with a debt instrument like a debt payment for general obligation or revenue bonds or revenue obligation or a loan, then you make payments over time. And so the theory being that the generations who are enjoying that benefit are the ones who are paying for it. We can also do a dedicated sales tax or TPT tax. That can be used for the debt service payment or for ongoing costs. That's one item that's kind of on the forefront of everyone's thoughts these days, with the Citizen Advisory Committee looking at that for a potential recreation, community center, aquatic center. And then there's also public-private partnerships. This, we just wanted to graphically show you what the funding sources are and what the eligible uses are. So the general fund is the least restrictive. You can use it for any general government purpose, and so that's kind of shown there. Highway User Revenue Fund can only be used for transportation. Capital grants, those are very specific to a project. Construction sales tax can be used for general government, recreation, open space, transportation. We do have a 1/3 cent sales tax that the council approved some time back, and that can be used for streets, transportation, either debt service or projects. And then we have those development impact fees, fees that can fund either library and culture, recreation, open space, public safety, or transportation. A note on the library piece, that's really just to pay back debt service, so that will go away in a couple years. And then we have items that are very specific to our water, wastewater, and stormwater. And so system capacity fees are for growth in those funds. The resource fees fund is only for water rights, and then the enterprise funds can be used for anything related to those operations. So what's included in the annual budget? When we present that 5-year plan to you, it's that first year really that you'll consider with the annual budget approval. So we'll come to you on May 22nd with that 5-year CIP plan asking for approval. We'll take that 1 year, include it in the annual budget, and then ask you to include that in the tentative budget the same day. And then in June, you would do a final approval. So we do have a couple of slides with different projects on it. The only projects that are included on the following slides are those that start in 2026 or are included in 2026 and forward. And Director Reuter was going to highlight a couple of those for you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. So as you can see, all of the departments worked very diligently to create this nice book, and finance put this together. They have done a great job, I just have to say. But we did vet all of our projects. So what you're seeing in fiscal year 26 has not only been vetted by the department directors that are making the requests, but also the subject matter experts, so facilities, IT, fleet. And then I'll do one last final vetting to make sure we have capacity internally to perform these projects and push out these projects. So just a couple of projects I'll highlight just in Public Works. We do have all the directors here from all the other departments, and so if you have specific questions on specific projects, they can answer those for you. But I'll just highlight a couple of them. Glassford Hill Road, I think everyone is anxiously anticipating that. It did start this fiscal year. I think we got the money a couple fiscal years ago. We are working very diligently to do a little bit of redesign so we can minimize the right-of-way impacts along that stretch. Our goal is still to have that out, hopefully to bid late summer, early fall, and that'll be about a 12-month project. So hopefully by this time next year, we'll all be driving on 6 lanes. So that would be great. Another one I just wanted to highlight is the lakeshore drainage improvements. That project actually just came up this year as a maintenance project. It wasn't a CIP project. When we were out looking at something completely different, we noticed that some of the lakeshore drainage along there was undercutting our roadway. So this fiscal year, we did have some professional service funding, so we did a design. That design will be completed early this next fiscal year, and then this money will be spent to address only 2 areas. Long-term, we will have to look at a larger project for that. But the good thing about this project, it's going to be 100% funded by Yavapai Flood Control District. So we are a portion of that. So that's a great add to that. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm happy to answer any other questions on any specific projects, but I just wanted to throw 2 out there just to start the conversation.
Council, anything? Go.
Perfect. All right. So with that, that completes the capital improvement program and project overview. We'll jump into the budget overview next. And so one of the things we always like to do is reset our mindset on why we do budgeting. Why do we do it? It's really how we ensure that we meet our strategic goals. So it's how we determine what, how we deliver services, what we deliver to the community, and how we finance this. So it's, again, about limited resources and making sure that we achieve the council's focus areas and goals for the community. So here are the roles in budgeting, and I know you've seen this a couple of times, so I won't belabor it, but really this is just to show that it's an iterative, collaborative effort with the community, with management, with the council to make sure that, again, we're spending our money where we need to, where with the allocations of resources are where the most value is for our community. Some of the key assumptions that we had going into the budget season, one of them is that we requested that everybody stay within their current budget authority. So we knew that revenues would be relatively flat, and when you compare what we expect in 26 to 25, we're really expecting that same level. And so some of the exceptions on keeping those spending levels kind of flat were personnel and benefits, and Shauna or Director DeChant will talk about that in a little bit, health and safety items, and then utilities, so electricity and water costs. So one of the things that we did was we asked everybody to use innovation and reallocate their budget to make sure that we're delivering high impact, high value items to the community. And when we go through the department overview, you'll see a lot of it was about reallocation, a lot of it was about sharing resources across different departments and that type of thing. So it's about efficiencies, and again, making sure that we could do more within the same budget level. One of the things we also said was that there was no new positions unless there was a dedicated funding source. So whether somebody reallocated within their existing budget or had a dedicated new funding source, that kind of was the determining factor. We do have 2 retirement plans, the Arizona State Retirement and the Public Safety Retirement. Both of those came in with relatively flat rates. And then we also wanted to continue making an investment towards paying down our unfunded liability with the Public Safety Retirement Fund. So we're about in the 80-85% as of the end of December. And so we've been able to either maintain or increase that level each year. Before I hand it over, I just want to touch bases again. We kind of mentioned about being flat on the revenues, whether that's local tax, intergovernmental, the Highway User Revenue Fund. We're expecting the same level of revenue. The good news is it's not decreasing, but it's not increasing. The other piece is that we do have those built-in approved rates in the water, wastewater, stormwater, but those are already used to offset the planned expenses through that rate study that were performed. And then another thing about the revenues is that we really worked hard to collaborate this year. So, for example, when we wanted to know what should we expect in permit fee revenue, we worked with development services to say, what is your outlook for the number of residential permits, the number of commercial permits, and that type of thing. And with that, I'll hand it over to Director DeChant.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, thank you. So coming into this fiscal year renewal for benefits, I apologize, let me get this a little bit closer. We went into renewal for our benefits this year with higher utilization than expected from our benefit plan. So over our last 3 years, we've been trending above 100% on our utilization or close to 100%. And coming into renewal this year, we were at about 127% for our benefits. That meant that our carriers came back with a quote for our renewal that was between 30 and 40%. We were able to negotiate that down through the process to a 19% increase on our benefit plan. So we've really focused on the last few months to build that cost assumption in, but also build additional plan options on our medical to help provide choices and some cost control measures as we move forward. This will be a first-year implementation for a 3-plan option, but our goal is to remain competitive with our benefit package and continue to refine that as we move forward. We also have looked at our compensation package and compared to our market and benchmark analysis. We're recommending in this budget a 5% base adjustment for our general pay plan. We do have additional dollars that are set aside to come back to the compression analysis that we've been talking about since the implementation of the pay study in July 1 of 2023. So the foundation of our pay structure was rebuilt and implemented in 2023. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining that market competitive pay structure as we move forward with that 5%, essentially a cost of living, but it will take our minimum and our maximum of our pay structure and everybody in it and bring it up 5%. And then that additional dollars will come back to mid-year after further review with recommendations for any compression adjustments. With that, I'll take any questions on personnel items.
Any personnel questions? Thank you, ma'am.
With that, one thing that we always want to outline is that at the town we have a methodology that's fiscally conservative and community-minded. We talked a little bit about those priorities and how we like to tie what we're funding in our budget, whether it's capital improvement or operational, to what the community needs. The other important piece is that we're fiscally conservative. What does that mean? That means we always have a structurally balanced budget where our ongoing revenues exceed or meet our ongoing expenses. You can see in this chart, we've done a forecast for 2026. We have approximately $59 million in expected ongoing revenues and $54 million in ongoing expenses. So we're expecting a surplus between $4 and $5 million, depending on the final numbers that we'll bring forward to you. But we intend to maintain that over each year, as shown in the chart. One of the other things it means, that we talked a little bit about this a little bit earlier, is that one-time revenues and resources are used for those one-time operating and capital expenses or investments. So this strategy ensures that we have long-term financial stability and maintains, for example, our bond rating. So if we do opt to do a bond, right now we're the most highly rated for a jurisdiction our size. And so Fitch does a AA plus, and then Standard & Poor's is a AA rating, which is something to be proud of. This is our fund balance. So again, this is our savings account, and each year where our revenues exceed our expenses, we put that away, and you can see that this has grown from 2017 forward. We do expect 25 and 26 to be more of at a level position, just because of that flat piece of the revenue, and then the investments that we're showing you we want to make or are proposing to make in those capital improvement projects. But this could look a little bit different when we come back with our final funding plan at the end of May. We also wanted to kind of show you where our debt profile is at this point. So at the end of this fiscal year, we'll only have $3.8 million left on the revenue refunding bond. And then on the WIFA loan, we paid, or the Water Infrastructure Financing Authority loan, we paid one off, and then the other one at the end of the fiscal year will only have $648,000 left and will be paid off in the following year. This graphically shows you the revenue obligation bond, just to show you that the principal payments are dropping off drastically, and then we have some just smaller payments until that's paid off. One of the questions that we always get is, what happens to the money that we are dedicating to this bond, and what can we do with that? This is predominantly paid by that 1/3 cent sales tax. So those monies are dedicated to streets projects. We could either look at doing another revenue obligation bond, or possibly just paying projects on a pay-as-you-go basis. So that's something that we'll talk about as we get into the tentative budget and the final budget. Department highlights. So one of the things that we wanted to show you first was where our allocation is. You can see the largest piece being in public works, which kind of makes sense if you think about the priorities. We had the stormwater, the streets, the transportation, and then we have a large piece in utilities. So that, again, that's the water piece, the stormwater piece, the wastewater piece. Sorry, stormwaters and public works. And then we have public safety. So again, the communities, the safety of the community is very important. So that's where our allocation is. Across all funds, the preliminary budget that we're bringing before you today is $198 million. That's compared to the fiscal year 25 approved budget of $210 or $211 million. So right now we're looking at a decrease of $12 million. I have a slide for each of the departments, which I'll go through fairly quickly, just kind of pointing out some of the highlights. This is town council. The personnel piece, there was a decrease due to fewer participants in the health plan, offset by kind of that increase that Director Duchamp talked about. And then we also had moved some of the items from non-departmental. So non-departmental is where we put kind of some of the general items, but our effort this year was to put all the budget authority within the departments who would be managing that. After further discussion, these will probably move $40,000 for the CASA piece to Parks and Rec, and $125,000 to the town manager or economic development piece. So the town council budget will be relatively flat. Development services, they did have a request to increase their operating budget. It says $50,000 here, but they did make some offsetting decreases, so their net increase is about $35,000. And then we wanted to highlight some of those one-time operating requests. They just really represent well kind of where they're investing towards our focus areas, so the wildlife corridor, the Urban Land Institute, that type of thing. One of the major expenses we have here is the implementation services for planning, permitting, code case management, and business licensing. So we have that at $635. We had almost $500,000 budgeted in the current year, which most of that we have not spent. So that's offsetting this piece. So it's not an additional piece. And then moving on to finance, my favorite. So one of the things, again, I was going to highlight was kind of where people were reallocating dollars. So we had a 0.63 FTE, and we're requesting that be made a 1.0 full-time equivalent. And so we're doing that by cutting our operating budget to finance that, because we think there's more value there. We also are going through a implementation of a human resource information system, a recruiting system, learning management system. And so in kind of that process, it does timekeeping and payroll. We thought that the the duties would, most of the bulk would go over to the Human Resources Department. So we're transferring a person over there. Again, this is about collaboration. Where is the position most appropriate, and how can we make it happen without increasing our budget? And then we did have some items from non-departmental come over. Again, the thought being that we would be responsible for managing it. So the sales tax audit services, the fee that we pay to the Arizona Department of Revenue for them doing our tax collection. And then we did have also that an increase or expense based on the benefit learning and leave management piece that I just kind of described. Human Resources, they have an increase in personnel, again, due to that position transferring from finance to Human Resources. We also did move the insurance premiums and retained losses from the non-departmental into Human Resources, who created a division for risk management so we could track our cost of risk more closely. And they also asked for an increase of investigative fees related to employee relation issues. Information technology, theirs looks a little bit different because we opted, last year we kind of started the process, and this year we kind of took it across the finish line where we were pulling all the townwide software into a different division under information technology. This allows us to gauge our investment in technology, also determine whether or not all the technology is leveraged, and then if somebody's looking for something new, we can look at our current system and determine whether or not we can accommodate those items with existing software. We went through a rigorous process where everybody had to do an inventory and determine whether or not they were fully utilizing their IT hardware and software. So we were able to kind of achieve some savings through there as well. There is a big investment this year with capital requests, but this is kind of cyclical. So we're working on putting together a replacement program so that we kind of don't have the ebbs and flows based on those replacements. So going into future years, we'll just kind of set aside a piece so that's more stable going over time. This piece is, again, that town-wide hardware and software that we developed. So you can see the large increase, but we have offsetting decreases in all the departments because we moved all those budget authority dollars over to this division. Legal, they added 2 new divisions to their department so that they could track both civil and criminal activities. They've made a lot of progress this year with backlogs and adding more value-added services, and so this will allow them to also track costs in these different areas. Library, you can see that they had a couple changes. They had a decrease due to a split allocation of their current admin services manager. You might recall that the council approved taking community services and breaking it into library and parks and rec. And so they had a decrease due to the reclassification of the community services deputy director to the parks and rec director. And then they also had a reclassification from a librarian to a library assistant. Again, it was about them reviewing what they do, how they do it, and how can they do something different with their current budget. They do have different funding sources, donation fund, bed tax, and grants as well. Magistrate Court, so their budget stayed pretty much the level. The only changes really came from the personnel assumptions that we talked about earlier. We did add 2 new funds to them, though, so that we could track different funding sources for them. One is the Judicial Collection Enhancement Fund, or JSEF, and the other is Fill the Gap, or FTG. That just allows us to track those monies separately. They're governed by Arizona Revised Statutes, so that way we can make sure that we have compliance. Neighborhood services, so we did decrease their budget based on the down payment assistance program going away. Though we'll have an offset to that later on, I think, when we come back to tentative on how we'd like to use those dollars. But the other operating request was $10,000 for the CDBG program consulting. So they've had a relatively stable budget. Again, we had the decrease in the down payment assistance program, but we'll probably be reallocating that and coming back to you with a tentative budget showing you how we did that. Non-departmental, you can see the sharp decreases there. Again, the thought being that we were going to move dollars out of here and put it in the department that's responsible for those funds. There's 2 moves that we have outstanding here: Prevent Child Abuse and the Arizona Crisis Team. Those will be transferred to the police department to manage. And then we also have the Emergency Services Agreement, which will be transferred to the town manager's office. Later on, you'll see that we created a new division there for the emergency management piece. Parks and Recreation, so this is kind of the offset to the allocation differences that we did it on the library side. One of the other things to note is that they did request a full-time parks maintenance specialist for the pool. There's a lot of chemicals and a lot of safety issues that they need a dedicated person for. So the way that they did that was they took part of their part-time pool that they used for events, umpire wages, and then we had an unfunded admin assistant 2 position. So again, they were able to achieve what they needed by reallocating their budget dollars. And then you can see that they have various funding sources. The Miranda Fund this year, we received, I believe, legal authority to use that for scholarships. So they'll be awarding those in the next fiscal year. And then we have some things for maintaining the park that they've requested. The police department, so there is a decrease from the reclassification of their overtime budget. We, over time, have collected money in the Smart and Safe Fund. That's really, generally in most jurisdictions, there's a quarterly transfer of overtime costs into that. So the thought being that you're not really supposed to kind of build it over time, really use that to kind of pay your current year expenses. So we're deploying that in fiscal year 26. They also had a decrease from moving their software to the town-wide piece. And then they have some operating requests from some dedicated funding sources that are here. They also did have $461,000 of software that's really focused on some of those things that help them operate more efficiently and be able to provide value to the community. Public Works, they had an increase due to a partial reclass of salaries. Again, if this isn't it didn't result in a net increase, but it was just kind of moving from one department, one fund to another. There is an increase from the reclass of the simple contribution that we took from non-departmental and put that in Public Works. And then they had an offsetting decrease. Last year, they had the cost to the post-fire repair from the event center, and that goes away this year. And then we also show their one-time requests. A lot of them are for safety. You can see there the SS4A or the Safety Action Plan. We have the closeout of the transportation grants for SIMPO, some court remodeling. And again, these are all part of the projects that Heather, Director Reader talked to you about earlier with the vetting. Stormwater, so they were able to request, and we are recommending approval of one stormwater technician and one stormwater specialist based on their revenues. You might recall that the stormwater, they are an enterprise fund, so they have to sustain their expenses by using their user fees, and they were able to establish that that is possible, so those positions are in the budget for approval. There was also an increase in lease and equipment related to those positions. And then we have a rate study that we're anticipating doing in the next coming years. And then you can see the other capital requests. The town clerk, so we did have a reclass. That was one of the few reclasses that we had to go to a higher grade, but there's not a monetary effect directly related to that. And then we just have a total for their investment in software, but there's no increase in that. The town manager's office, so they have existing software which we listed. They're relatively flat and boring this year, so it was hard to put things on the slide. But one of the things that they did do is they did break apart and add a division for emergency management so that we could track those costs and our investment in that effort going forward. Utilities and wastewater. So we also had a request, if you recall, in fiscal year 25, they wanted to include an operations manager that we held. We approved the position, council approved that position, but we didn't fund it based on review of their rates and whether or not it would sustain it. So going through, it looks like that will be possible. We're still doing the last part of that analysis to make sure, but it looks like that would be a recommendation from staff for council approval. They did have an increase in repairs and maintenance. Some of that is taking, if you read through the capital improvement project, the programs as well, it kind of talks about deferred maintenance and things that might be safety issues. So they were focused on really making sure that the different, SCADA or the different systems were all running it as should be. We did also have a 3.5% increase in the operations contract that's expected. We will bring that contract back to council at the end of May, I believe, as well. And then you can see their capital improvement and one-time cost. water. This is where that other piece of the operations manager is being funded from. So 0.55 is here and 0.45 is in the wastewater. We see those increases in electricity here, repairs and maintenance. There is a request for a contracted certified backflow specialist. So most of these are really centralized around health and safety for the community and being able to make sure that our utilities are sustainable.
Ms. Morris, if I can just pause you, give you a little bit of a break for a moment.
Yes.
Council, this is going to be our opportunity before we move on with council requests. I first just want to say, ladies, you crushed it. This is an amazing presentation. The amount of work that you guys put into the PowerPoint and the detail from all staff is greatly appreciated. And I speak for all of council that when I feel comfortable being able to go to you, ask a question just because, hey, I just need some clarification on this. And you're able to explain it in layman's terms and make it make sense. So I don't want you to think for one moment that we take any of this for granted, because this is an incredible job. And our residents should be very proud of this. And they can go online and see our budget and see everything that you presented today. And you should all be commended for your hard work. And Mr. Davidson, you have a big role in that as well. And I just want to appreciate that. Council, do you have anything else to add? Vice Mayor?
First of all, the public doesn't know, but we had briefing sessions with staff last week. And the budget briefing books that we received I'm going through them still, but they are phenomenal. And I can't thank you enough again for the hard work that everyone did with all the input and information we have in those books. So thank you.
Councilman?
Thank you. I just want to add my kudos for your intelligent and well-prepared and well-thought-out presentations. You're actually the ones that keep the town running, keep the wheels turning, and it really makes a difference. And so you really need some, you deserve a lot of respect for that. Thank you. While I'm at it, I'd like to say that yesterday, as many of you know, was Town Employee Appreciation Day, featuring a lunch and an awards ceremony. Our town manager, Gilbert Davidson, emceed the wonderful event, which honored high-performing staff, and this encourages great morale and teamwork and high performance on the side of our employees. Gilbert postponed his lunch until every person was honored and all the awards were given out. Later, Mr. Davidson worked into the evening at the atrium, answering citizens' questions about the Glassford Dells project. I just want to give him a shout out for going the extra mile for our town.
Thank you, sir. Ladies, anything to add that we haven't already said? Councilwoman?
I also want to thank you for all of this reading material. You're rather busy. Thank you.
Yes, as I thanked you last week, you guys have many balls in the air, and I'm so appreciative that you keep them all straight, because once you tell me that we have a surplus, my eyes glaze over, so.
I just wanted to say the same thing too, that I've been on the council long enough to know that you guys really, really work hard. And when you first come on council, you have no idea how a town was run. And you guys have made it clear and concise, and you're an amazing team, and it takes teamwork to do what you do. So you are truly, truly appreciated by all of us. And I know that people looking at home or later on TV or as a YouTube, they probably think we're just agreeing with you because, okay, let's just get out of this meeting. But it's not that way. We've already met with you and you've already gone over all of it. So we truly, truly do appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Morris.
Thank you. The last piece that we do have for you is that we received some council requests. And so we're looking for direction on how you would like us to incorporate, or if you'd like us to come back with a plan on any of these items.
Sure. I'll first like to start off with Councilman Freund. I believe he has the polling software. I think it's great. We get to get information, able to go out to the community, able to hear what they have to say, and have more of a structure way of doing that. That's terrific. I agree 100% with Councilman Freund. In regards to the remaining list, Mr. Williams resigned as a 301 this afternoon, so he is no longer a council member. And if it's okay with council, I don't feel any need to discuss any of these items. any further. So does anyone wish to comment more on the polling software?
Mr. Mayor, we'll have the capacity for that. So we've got it priced out and what'll be included in the budget when we submit it for tentative approval.
Anything else, Council? Councilman?
I'd just like to say that some of the things that, the asks that Councilman Williams had on this list might be worthy of consideration. And so I don't think we should just, wholesale discard everything, but I try to identify things that going forward we might want to do as a town. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead,
we
Council.
will include, there are infrastructure issues in here that are absolutely a part of our CAP. We are going to be looking, and it was mentioned, of the pay down of the debt off of the dedicated street sales tax that have been levied. That's going to free up capacity for other large-scale street projects that could be done. And we could also dedicate some of the money out of that fund to additional pavement preservation. So there are some things that we certainly can make some adjustments for continued investment in our infrastructure.
And Mr. Davidson, I'm confident in staff if at any point during midway through the budget, you recognize the need to be able to kind of pivot a little bit and bring something forward to council, that we would have the opportunity at that point to then address that situation. So, that being said, anything else to add? Folks, thanks for coming out. Great job. Meeting adjourned.